Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Horror Review. I'm your host, the Pumpkin Man, and today is Christmas. Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone. Well, I hope it is still Christmas by the time this video actually does release, but, can't be too sure with me. And today we'll be covering The Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit, which is the sequel to The Mysterious House. Now you might be wondering, Pumpkin Man, why are you covering a Halloween-themed episode on Christmas? Well, that's because this new episode that was released for Halloween is sort of a more recent episode in the Walton Files series. To be honest, I don't think I've ever covered a Walton Files episode that was, released not so long ago. Because when I did my review on The Mysterious House, I believe at the time that episode was already about a year or two old, if I'm not mistaken. When it comes to this one, though, it's only about a month old. So I decided that I wanted to cover this before I just forgot about it, because I really did like this episode, and I've just been dying to make a review on it ever since I saw it. Now, my original plan for this Christmas special was to make a review video on the other Walton Files special being Boozoo's Ghost, which was actually a Christmas special, so that would have made a lot more sense to do now, but I really just wanted to get around to making a review on the Return of the Pumpkin Rabbit, since I was a big fan of the Mysterious House episode on the Walton Files. Not to mention, that also was my very first horror review, so I kind of find it fit in that I come back and finally talk about its very long awaited sequel that took 4 years to release after the original. So yeah, that's what we'll be doing today. So how about let's just cut the chit chat and finally get into it. So at the start of the video, we get a little intro here, starting up like how an old cartoon would, or like an old feature film with like showing the company who made the episode and stuff like that. Skipping a little ahead of that, we then finally get to see the title card, which tells us what we're watching. Thanks, Martin, for reminding me. I kind of forgot. After the title card, we get to get a view of our four protagonists: Jay, Ralph, Dino, and Paco, making their way up a hill to a very, very familiar house. As they reach the top, Ralph proclaims that they saw the house and they should leave, before Jay makes a remark saying that this was once the old Waterman's house. Paco then comes up and asks why it was abandoned in the first place, and then Jay gives us the story on why. So the story goes that every year the Watermans would always have children come into their house, and every year after the children went to the house, they would always end up missing. As we then see all the missing person posters of these children that have gone missing on Halloween after they have visited the house. After seeing the last two missing person photos, we get to see a picture of Ducky and Tammy, the main protagonists of the mysterious house. But supposedly, the sister of one of the victims were watching as they saw Tammy and Ducky enter the house and never came back out. But as Jay goes on with the story, supposedly none of the bodies were ever found, leading to no legal actions being taken against the Watermans. But the town was not having it and supposedly forced them out of their house. And both are brought to the town square, where they are hanged and burned alive, finally paying for their crimes for murdering those innocent children. Jay then explains how the house has been abandoned ever since, but you can supposedly sometimes still hear voices inside. Jay then gives the idea that they should all go inside and explore the house, saying that if they do, they'll be considered some of the toughest kids in town. Ralph, on the other hand, is determined to stay outside as he considers going inside to be a very dumb idea. Wow, a kid making a good decision in a horror video? Never thought I'd see that in my life. The kids then make their way inside of the house to view it, and as they see, the place is definitely run down and abandoned. At least, I hope so. Jay then pulls out her father's lighter and proceeds to light this destroyed jack-o'-lantern, and as they do it, a TV comes on in the room on their left. They then proceed to slowly go near the room and investigate what turned the TV on in there. They peek in to see that somebody is there sitting on a chair watching that TV. Paco then says to Jay that they thought this place was abandoned. Jay says it's supposed to be, but then Dino comes out repeating the last thing Jay said really loud, getting the attention of the person who was sitting in that chair. The person then says that they do not need to hide anymore and that they can come out. The kids then eventually do come out and talk to the woman sitting in the chair. They proceed to apologize for entering the house before she asks what's their name. Paco tries to reply but couldn't get his name out because he is so scared before the woman in the chair then says, "Do you like candy?" and that they have plenty of it to go around as they are the first guests of the night. As the lady is talking with the children, Dino then proceeds to sneak around the chair to the other side, which he then proceeds to grab the photo book that is on the arm of the chair, with Jay whispering over to him before we get interrupted by the sheep witch. Well, she's back again. But I think this time she is actually voiced by someone compared to the Mysterious House, where it was nothing more but an AI generated voice. Huh, I guess they finally got the budget to get another voice actor all along. The witch sheep goes on to explain that her husband will eventually be home soon. And I think if we're talking about a husband, we know exactly who that person is. As Paco is trying to talk to her, he gets interrupted and she says that they should go grab the candy, which is in the kitchen. And she'll watch as they go. And so she does, but oh my god, that is creepy as shit. We then cut back to Dino as he sneakily walks away with the photo book in hand, as they all proceed to leave the room to go find the candy. As they are leaving the room to go get candy, Paco proceeds to notice something out of the corner of his eye, and he sees a mysterious figure standing in a doorway, which that figure happens to be Ducky. Saying that he knows a way out, Paco tries to tell Jay, but Jay is already long gone trying to go find the candy, so Paco proceeds to go to Ducky and follow him. We then cut to see outside with the moon rising and Ralph still waiting there playing with his ball. Ralph begins to voice his frustrations over his friends making this very stupid decision to go here, as he thinks that this was a very bad idea from the very start. He gets so angry, in fact, he throws his ball down, which then proceeds to fly past the house into a very dark part of the woods. He then proceeds to run after the ball to try to retrieve it. As he is going to look for his ball, he comes across this gate with these two scarecrows standing outside of it. We then get a close-up shot of these mannequins as Ralph is past them to go through this gate. They do look very realistic, so I wonder if these are also victims of the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep. As he goes through the gate, he then finds himself in this cornfield in the backyard. As Ralph is looking for the ball, he notices someone standing in the distance, giggling, sounding like a child, before this mysterious figure then disappears. Ralph then goes forward to proceed to investigate what the noise came from. Ralph then gets stopped by none other than the pumpkin rabbit himself, looking ominous and creepy as ever before, thanks to the new animation style. He then asks Ralph if he's lost, with Ralph then giving a look at the gate, possibly thinking of running for it. The pumpkin rabbit then shows Ralph that he has his ball and asks if he wants it back. Ralph says he would like the ball back, and then the pumpkin rabbit proceeds to tell him to come and get it. Ralph then apologizes for being there and tries to leave before the pumpkin rabbit tries to persuade him one more time to come get the ball. With Ralph being the reasonable thinker that he's come to show us that he is, he proceeds to say, "Fuck this ball, I'm out of here." You gotta give your respect to Ralph here. Up until this point, he has made the smartest decisions out of the entire friend group. From staying outside the house and not going in with the rest of his friends to just absolutely saying, "Screw the ball, I don't care," and walking away from the pumpkin rabbit. You just gotta love Ralph. He just is the smartest character out of this little friend group here. Which leads me to believe that he is going to be the one to get out of this all unscathed and nothing bad is going to happen to him just because of how smart he actually is in his decision making. As he is walking away, he decides to look behind him to notice that the pumpkin rabbit is slowly closer than he was before, making him slowly pick up speed before going into a full sprint trying to get away. As Ralph is running, he proceeds to bump into a scarecrow of some kind, looking up to see it's actually a mutilated body, this being the body of Tammy, the last victim that we got to see in the mysterious house. As he looks up at the body, he then proceeds to look behind him to notice that the pumpkin rabbit is now starting to tail him. Ralph then proceeds to go into another full sprint and tries to get away. As he is running, he accidentally steps on a pumpkin, getting his foot stuck in it, trying to get it free and trying to keep running, but he just can't. He is now stuck in place. As he tries so desperately to get his foot out, he notices the pumpkin rabbit has finally caught up to him. The pumpkin rabbit then goes on to grab him and proceeds to rip and tear at his face. Oh, god damn it, I thought he was gonna live. Come on, he was the smartest one out of the group, and he's the one who gets fucking killed? Son of a bitch. I was really rooting for Ralph this whole thing. God damn you, Martin. Son of a bitch. Well, after that horrific scene, we get to cut inside the house to see Jay is in the kitchen. Jay then notices that Paco is no longer with her and proceeds to call for his name to try to get his attention. As she's waiting, she then hears screams coming from outside, presumably Ralph's, as he's still being torn apart by the pumpkin rabbit. Jay then proceeds to back up slowly into a cupboard to try to hide. As she is closing the door, she accidentally knocks down the bowl of candy, breaking it, making the TV spontaneously turn off, having everything around her now go quiet. She stays in hiding as she hears footsteps slowly approach. Within the next scene, we get to see Ducky is now leading Paco to the supposed way out that he told him about. As he's walking, he looks to his left to see that there's photos on the wall of the missing children from years before. We see that they finally reached this supposed way out, with Ducky opening the door and letting Paco walk through it. As Paco enters, he is led instead to a bedroom, presumably the same one that Ducky and Tammy stayed in during the events of the mysterious house. Ducky then comes up behind Paco, telling him that Mr. and Mrs. Watersman were bad people, before turning the lights off in the room and closing the door behind him, locking Paco in. That's very weird. Why the hell is Ducky helping the kids get caught? I mean, is he working with these guys? I mean, they killed him, so I don't know. That just doesn't make any sense. I mean, maybe later in the episode we'll get an explanation. I really don't know. Paco tries to beg to be let out, but unfortunately isn't. He then proceeds to look around the room to notice that the witch sheep was in there the entire time with him. The witch sheep then proceeds to start singing a nursery rhyme very creepily, might I add, which then begins to scare Paco. She then proceeds to slowly move out of the corner. Paco then begins to slowly walk back towards the door. While backing up into it, he accidentally knocks down that bunny clock that was on the wall. But as soon as that happens, we then hear the witch sheep stop singing. She then reaches out from under the bed to grab the clock. She then proceeds to start singing once again, before slowly pulling the clock under the bed with her. After the clock is pulled under the bed, Paco proceeds to look underneath it. Oh, for crying out loud, what the hell are you doing, Paco? Jesus, Ralph would never have made this mistake. Sucks that he's dead now, but still. Anyways, as he looks under the bed, he notices the clock is there, but no witch sheep. He then gets up to attempt to turn on the lamp in the room so he can actually see, but as soon as he turns it on, we see that the witch sheep is hovering over in him, before cutting to the next scene. And within the next scene, we see that Jay is still hiding under the cupboard for some reason instead of just making a run for it. I don't know. As she's looking out the cupboard door, we then get to see that Ralph is here, peeking his head in through the door, noticing that Jay is there, telling her to please open the door and come out. After getting no response, Ralph proceeds to go away, but just then, the cupboard door opens to reveal that the pumpkin rabbit is out there waiting for her. And oh my god, that has to be the creepiest scene of the pumpkin rabbit ever. As the door opens, he proceeds to drop a one-liner by saying trick or treat before reaching for Jay. She then closes the door on his hand before making a run for it through the cupboards. But then she looks behind her to realize the pumpkin rabbit has now gotten into the cupboard with her and then proceeds to chase her. As the chase ensues, the pumpkin rabbit then grabs Jay's leg, making her fall. As it looks like Jay's about to die, she grabs a glass quickly and knocks the pumpkin rabbit in the face with it, knocking his face off a little bit before making a run for it. As she is running, we get this little cool 3D shot before she runs into Dino behind a door. Then they both proceed to fall down a set of stairs into the basement. While in the basement, Jay finds a light switch. Dino then gets up to proceed to show Jay that he still has the photo book that he took earlier. Jay then proceeds to open up the photo book to see a picture of the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep together. But as she looks to the bottom of the page, we get to see the names of the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep. The names being Lorenzo and Rachel. But then Jay proceeds to go through the book, noticing that there's pictures within it, these pictures being of the dead children that came to the house before and never came back out. Jay then jumps to a different page in the book to notice that there's a photo of them in it now. And we get to see that this photo was of the group, but outside before they even entered the house. So somebody must have been stalking them and took their photo before they even entered. But now I kind of want to take a comparison here between Ducky and Tammy's photo and this group's photo. So we know that Ducky and Tammy were the last victims killed before the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep were burned in the town square. So if we want to take a comparison for dates here, we could see that Ducky and Tammy died in 1979, while this photo of the group was taken in 1983. So that must mean there's a 4-year difference between now and the events of the mysterious house. Jay then puts the book down after looking at the photo and sees the door in front of them, which they both proceed to enter, which leads them to a hallway with 3 doors. As they enter, you can then hear music begin to play. As Dino is exploring, Jay proceeds to close the door behind them so that they do not get followed. But unfortunately, the door up to the basement is left open, and the pumpkin rabbit proceeds to come down after them. As Jay and Dino go down the hallway, they come across the source of the music, that being the robot from the mysterious house. But he looks dead. Why would he be dead? Wasn't he working with the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep before in the mysterious house? I mean, granted, he didn't really do anything. He just like sort of took the picture of Ducky and Tammy, but other than that, I don't remember him doing anything. But why would they kill him if they were working with him, or the other way around? I guess maybe we'll also get an answer for that later in the video. Anyways, as the music continues to play, Jay attempts to try the last door in the hall, but unfortunately it won't open as it's locked. Jay then attempts to try to open the second door, but is unsuccessful with doing that as well. So they proceed to try to open the first door on the hallway. As they go to open it, we see that the funhouse door behind them has now opened, meaning the pumpkin rabbit has followed them down. And as they open the door to the first room, we get to see the clown from the mysterious house? Okay, now I am like officially confused. What the hell's going on here? The clown was also alongside the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep. They were all together, weren't they? So, weren't the clown and the robot also a part of these, killings? Didn't they have anything to do with this as well? Or, I don't know. Like I said, I'm lost. Maybe we'll actually get an answer soon enough. I really hope so. Anyways, Jay proceeds to go into the room with this dead clown, and as she is walking, she realizes she has stepped on something. She moves her foot to see what it was, and what? A photo of the clown and the robot with the pumpkin rabbit? So this entire time, the robot and the clown were also dead kids? What? I'm so confused. So those must be the souls of them still wandering. But again, if they are in the same situation like Ducky, why are they all like helping them? Because back then in the mysterious house, the robot took a photo of Ducky and Tammy, but usually when that happens, they are going to end up as the new victims. So wouldn't the robot not do that? And not to mention the clown was sort of stalking Tammy within the mysterious house as well. And then, like I said earlier, Ducky led Paco into the bedroom that they stayed in and got him killed. So why are these souls of the children helping these guys out? I'm so confused. I really hope we do get an answer later on, because I really want to know what's going on here. Anyways, after moving forward, Jay proceeds to see the clown in front of her. She proceeds to use the lighter that's with her and notices that there's something within the clown's mouth. She very grossly reaches into his mouth to grab the item that is there. She retrieves it to notice that it is a key. As they are leaving the room with the key, they both notice that the funhouse door that they closed behind them is now open, realizing that they have been followed. Jay then proceeds to grab Dino's hand as they make their way down the hallway with the key to try to open the final door, which they successfully do. They have found themselves in a dark room after opening the door, but they can see a little vent at the back of the room. Jay goes in to try to open it, but as Jay moves on, we saw that the witch sheep now has entered the basement with the children. Jay makes her way to the vent to try to open it, but as she does, she accidentally falls back, hitting her hand on a light bulb, which manages to turn it on, lighting up the room. As Jay gets up, she notices that they are in a room with mannequins, all having small pieces of the costumes the dead children once wore, and even sort of looking like some of them. Jay and Dino proceed to back up to the wall before the witch sheep peeks her head in and kills the lights. Jay then proceeds to use the lighter, and seeing the mannequins again this time, they now bear the faces of all the dead children. Jay and Dino then proceed to try to get out of the room, but then notice that the pumpkin rabbit has now entered the basement as well. But then the pumpkin rabbit proceeds to repeat what Ducky said earlier, saying that Mr. and Mrs. Waterman were very bad people. Just then, he proceeds to walk towards the children. Jay and Dino go back into the room and lock the door behind them, but the pumpkin rabbit is still approaching. The pumpkin rabbit is now directly at the door. The children then back up to the back wall, which, funny enough, the wall does say behind them, the end, sort of like saying that this is the end for you. Yeah, I don't think I actually need to explain that one. The children are then approached by Paco, which then scares Dino into dropping the book on the ground. Jay asks, "What did you do to him?" before we see Paco's body fall to the ground, split in half with his head falling off. But all that was a distraction so the pumpkin rabbit can come up behind Dino and grab him. The pumpkin rabbit then begins to try to rip and tear at his face, just like he did to Ralph, before the witch sheep then grabs Jay and restrains her, holding her back and making her watch. Jay manages to break free from the witch sheep's grasp and then proceeds to run towards the pumpkin rabbit before pushing his face right off, just like a mask. After that, Dino is then dropped to the ground, unconscious. Jay then proceeds to stare down the pumpkin rabbit as he covers his face and moves around frantically. Jay then proceeds to grab the photo book off of the ground. The pumpkin rabbit asks for the book back before slowly approaching Jay to try to get it. He then proceeds to stand directly over Jay, as we get a really good view of what's underneath the mask. But then Jay proceeds to pull up her father's lighter and then burns the book. As the book burns, the witch sheep cries out, "What have you done?" mirroring Tammy's last words from the mysterious house. The pumpkin rabbit is now in disbelief of what has just happened to the book, but just then we get to see the souls of the children slowly start making their way out of the shadows and towards the witch sheep and the pumpkin rabbit. The souls bring the witch sheep down before starting to claw and tear at her. We then get to see Ducky and Tammy slowly start to approach the pumpkin rabbit with some of the other children, before inevitably bringing him down into the flames. As Jay and Dino back up, they see this happening as the pumpkin rabbit is slowly being torn apart. The witch sheep dead on the ground. Dino and Jay watch over as the children then begin to surround the pumpkin rabbit in his final moments. Jay and Dino go to each other to comfort one another, but just then the room goes black and a light comes on. We get to see that it's Jay's father, and that he's finally found her, and says that they've been looking all over town for her. Yeah, this is really a thing of better late than ever. You know, if you arrived like, I don't know, 20 minutes earlier, maybe the other kids would be alive. But no, that's okay. Thanks for showing up for just the last two. And speaking of the other kids, did anyone notice that Jay's dad just said they were looking all over town for Jay and never brought up the rest of the friend group? Like, wouldn't that make more sense to be like, we were looking all over town for you kids, not just Jay? Since if Jay was considered missing, wouldn't the rest of them also be considered missing? Unless they didn't know that the rest of these kids went along with Jay to this house? I I don't know. I mean, that just sucks. I guess they weren't ever going to look for Ralph and Paco, but I guess it doesn't matter now since, well, they're dead. But poor Dino just gets left out of it too. He's so traumatized, I'd imagine. He got his fucking shit wrecked by the pumpkin rabbit and then gets practically told that he wasn't even being looked for in the first place. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't hear something, or maybe I'm just. I don't know. Oh, I just kind of find that funny. Anyways, as Jay and Dino proceed to leave the room, Jay looks back to notice that all the mannequins that were once there are gone, and in their place are two new mannequins for the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep. Don't worry, I'll cover this at the end of the episode, so stay tuned. As they are driving away, Jay looks out the window to notice the souls of Ralph and Paco standing there, almost as like they are giving their last goodbyes to their friend before they move on to the afterlife. And as they drive on, we go down to a shot of a destroyed, moldy pumpkin on the ground before cutting to the basement once again to see the wall that says, "The End." Bringing us to the end of this episode. Okay, so as I said at that one part, I want to go back real quick and try to explain some things. So let's just go ahead and do that before we end off the video entirely. Alright, so the things I want to look over here real quick are the things about the photo book and the mannequins that we saw. So first, let's go over the photo book. So with this photo book, I believe it was sort of like a thing that controlled the souls of the children. Because earlier in the episode, I was talking about how the souls of the kids were sort of like doing things for the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep, which obviously they really would not do since, well, they were murdered by them. But it seems like this book holds some power that it's just able to control these souls, and whoever has the book is able to do whatever they want with the souls. Like, for example, when we saw Ducky leading Paco to the room where he would be killed in, because obviously Ducky would never do this for the pumpkin rabbit or the witch sheep, as they were the ones to kill him. So obviously Ducky would never do this. And eventually, when the book finally got burnt and destroyed, we saw the souls of the children finally break free of this control, and they got their free will back to do what they wanted to do. So, with this free will, they eventually took their revenge on the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep, which before they probably could not have done due to the control they were under from this book. Now let's talk about the stuff with the mannequins. So as we saw, the mannequins that were meant to represent the children disappeared after the fact the souls of the kids were set free. And in place of them were two new mannequins for the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep. Now, what I think these are supposed to be are like manifested prisons. And these prisons, I believe, were intertwined with the souls of the children. Because as we saw, when the souls disappeared after they have killed the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep, the mannequins also disappeared with them. And in place were the two other ones for, obviously, the witch sheep and the pumpkin rabbit. So, yeah, I believe these were like sort of capsules to hold the souls in, while the book was sort of a controller to use these souls. Unfortunately, I don't have an explanation to how these mannequins showed up, like these new ones for the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep, because I believe the original ones that were meant for the kids were, I guess, were made by the pumpkin rabbit and the witch sheep. So those kind of have like an off-screen explanation, I suppose. But these new ones just kind of showed up out of nowhere, and I'm assuming these also work the same way as the original ones did by containing the souls of the witch sheep and the pumpkin rabbit. But the question remains, how exactly did these new ones get there? Did something make them? Like, was it the devil sort of punishing these two for all they've done? Maybe. I can't be too sure. I mean, it's an interesting theory. So maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll like theorize on it next year and potentially get to our very first theory video. But anyways, I think I rambled on long enough. I kept you guys here too long, I believe. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. So, yeah. Uh, Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year. I've been your host, the Pumpkin Man, and
Hey, Pumpkin Man.
Darkness. I'm kind of in the middle of the outro here. What do you want?
There's a letter here for you in the mail.
Oh, all right. I guess I'll go get it. Take a look at it. Okay. Let's see here. Uh, okay. Okay. Wait. Wait, what? No. No, that can't be. Oh, God. No. No.